So the methodology of lighting is pretty simple, right? You put light where you want it, and you block light where you don't. And so far, for the most part, we've talked about putting light where you want it. And now we're going to talk about controlling it a little bit more, blocking it where you don't want it. And we're going to look at a variety of different modifiers to get there. So we're going to talk about grids. We're going to talk about barn doors, snoots, grids on modifiers, and we're going to bring out the flags. And so those are just different ways in which we can block light. So we're going to start with the grids. And grids come in a variety of different sizes and configurations. And right here we have a 5, 10, and a 20-degree grid. This is a 20-degree grid. It's kind of like this honeycomb pattern that fits on top of the light, and sometimes they're big and sometimes they're small, and it basically creates these tiny little channels that help focus the light. What I like about grids is they actually don't change the quality of light. They just make the spread more focused. And so since we have a hard light, it's still going to be hard light, but you're going to notice how the spread changes. So we're going to look at it on the wall first before we bring in our model, and we're going to see how those look at different degrees. Now you can also change the spread by alternating distance as well. So you're going to use a combination of distance and grid degrees to really tighten the beam to get what you want. So we have the 20-degree grid. Now here we have for control, you can see that the beam is pretty tight in the middle, or sorry, it's pretty bright in the middle, and then it spreads across the whole wall. And yet when we put this 20-degree grid on, that beam gets more focused. Cool thing about grids is the edge isn't abrupt. It just becomes a way to channel that light into a narrower beam. It's not going to create a spotlight effect, it's just going to control the light a little bit tighter. So this is a 20. This is the 10. And you'll notice the honeycomb pattern in this particular instance is relatively similar, but the barrel is a little bit longer. And then finally we have the 5. And the 5 has a pretty long barrel, but the grid pattern here is pretty small and focused. And that creates a pretty tight beam of light. I'm going to show you the 3 of these side by side. This is 5, 10, 20, none. Another way in which we can focus the light is the snoot. And the snoot does kind of a similar thing, creates a channel of light, but the difference between the snoot is you're going to notice a more prominent hot spot in the middle. It actually kind of changes the quality of light a little bit, and it gives you a little bit more of an abrupt edge. So you can see it is a little bit different than the grids. Next we have the barn doors. And the barn doors have a series of flaps kind of on the edges that allow you to shape and control the light, creating either a narrow channel, or you're able to control that light to not be on the background, create a small channel in the face, so forth and so on. And you can move this in a variety of configurations. When it's wide open, you'll notice no difference. There we go. No difference from the hot light, but as you can see, if we wanted to bring some light off the floor, we could do that. You want to bring a light a little bit off the top or from the sides. You can create a more focused beam. You can create a totally narrow channel, and you can really fine-tune and manipulate this light to control it to be exactly what you want. Modifiers, like beauty dishes and softboxes, also have grids. Whenever you see a grid on a softbox, it's usually a little bit of a honeycomb, soft thing that velcros to the outside of it. I really like the grid on a beauty dish which again looks just like a regular grid, just much bigger, because it allows you to really focus the beam and take a lot of spill and light off the background. And it just kind of fits on the inside of this and does this. And that's the grid on the beauty dish. So I'm going to show you with and without how that changes. Here's the beauty dish. We've already seen what that beauty dish looks like on the subject. Pretty widespread. There we go. And that creates a much narrower beam on the background. Okay. Finally, we have the flag. The flag is one of my favorite modifiers of light, and it's underutilized by a lot of people. It's very, very powerful. Basically, the flag is just a metal frame, comes in a lot of different sizes, wrapped in a very absorbent black fabric that either can darken shadows or absorb light. So we use it as a way to create negative fill when it's next to the face. You can also use it as a way to block light from hitting the background or create intentional create intentional shadows on the face. Now, the thing about barn doors was the modification was really close to the light itself. So that makes it very soft. With the flag, you can take that flag and move it pretty far off of the light, and you can create a much harder shadow. So the closer the modification is to your subject, the harder it will be. So by taking the modification off the light, we have a lot more control about what that shadow is going to do. So we can either use it as a way to block light from hitting part of the image, like the background, or we could use it as a way to create intentional shadows on the face. And I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to do that. But basically, blocks the light. All right, now we're going to bring our subject in, and we're going to demonstrate all of these with an actual person so we can kind of see a little bit better how they are applied to a person. Okay, great. Let's set that right there. Perfect. Make sure we're woken up. So, we are going to position this light a little bit higher. We're going to do more of an angular light so we can make it a little bit more flattering, a little bit more dramatic on the face. Bring it down a little bit. Okay. All right, let's get a control. I'm going to get a little meter on here. Get a meter? Mm-hmm. Go ahead. Okay, so we're 11. So this is going to be our control with no modifier. Great. Now, we're going to start with the 20-degree grid. And we're going to lose a little bit of light on these grids as we go. So we're going to make sure we remeter, and we're going to try our best to keep the light pointed at the face. 8. So we already lost about a stop. Great. Okay. And then we're going to swap that out with the 10. Okay. About the same. And then one more. Really tight on the face. Same. All right. So let's take a look at the 4 of these images side by side. So in the first image, we've got no modification whatsoever. It's pretty open, pretty hard. Then we move into the 20 degree, then the 10 degree, and the 5 degree. And you can see by the time we get to the 5 degree image, the sweet spot of light's pretty small. You got to be careful when you're using that tight of a pocket of light. Sometimes the bottom of the face may not have enough light, and that can run into some problems for you. It changes the skull, changes the color of skin a little bit, so you really want to be super aware of that. All right, so let's put the snoot on and take a look at what that does. Hold that up there for me,
No
please. Oop. Right there, perfect. And we're going to do a little meter on that. So it is a little bit brighter. We're at F10 now. All right. And you can see in this image, it is actually noticeably brighter on the face. We do have a definitive hot spot in that kind of a modification. All right, now we're going to throw the barn doors on. Let's put that this way. All right. So obviously wide open. It's going to look the same. Let's go ahead and get a meter on this light just so we can confirm. 11. It is going to be the same as wide open. But I'm actually going to move it a little bit to the side so that I can block that background light a little bit more. Make it a little bit of a better use for the barn doors. All right, so at the moment, completely wide open, right? And as we close these in, you'll notice you get a little bit more shadow on the background. Or basically our threshold is right about when it starts to appear on our shoulder. That means it's going to be right about where we want to cut it. And you can see right around then, it starts to get a little bit darker on this side of the face. And we're going to bring this in a little bit more as well, just to give us a little bit of control. Get that extra spill off the background. And if we want to bring it up off a little bit off the bottom, we can. And same with the top. And we're basically going to cut light from the background. And we lost a little bit of light on the face, but it's still pretty close. So we probably want to compensate that and brighten that exposure up just a tiny bit. Let's double check that meter just so that we can make sure we're in the right spot. Okay. So we lost about a stop. And there we go. That looks much better when we compare the two. Okay, so the first one is wide open. The second one is we've created a little bit more of a tight channel using the barn doors. And you can isolate how that light looks pretty simply. All right, let's take that off. All right, next we're going to take a look at the beauty dish. And we're going to move that in a little bit closer because the beauty dish really shines when it's pretty close. So we're going to move it in nice and close, nice and tight, get a really soft contrasty light. And then we're going to bring in the grid and show you how that's going to isolate the subject from the background in that way too. And the grid's going to give us a little bit more control. Okay. All right. So this beautiful light, super soft, super pretty, but it is definitely lighting the background, right? And there are different ways we could manipulate this if we wanted. If we wanted to bring her way off the background, we could isolate it that way. But sometimes you only have a limited amount of space. So a grid allows you to focus that light and get a little bit more of that light off the background. And the quality of light on the face doesn't change. We have to compensate exposure, but it allows us more control in a tighter space. And that's pretty cool. All right. Last thing we're going to take a look at is the flag. And the flag is unique to a lot of these other modifiers because it works with whatever existing modifier you have. So whereas the barn doors is going to be a pretty hard light, the grids are going to be a pretty hard light, the flag works with whatever you have. So we could technically use the flag with the beauty for the grid, or we could use it with a hard light by itself, or you could use it with an octobox, or you could use it with a scrim. We're going to make the light hard only to make it easier for you guys to see the shadow, but know that the flag can be used in a lot of different configurations with a lot of other modifiers, and it plays really nicely. Okay. So, let's also keep in mind this is a relatively small flag. Flags can be very large and they can block bigger parts of the background, so you will see a much smaller shadow because of this flag, the size of this flag, but just know that sometimes you may want to use a bigger flag. All right, so we're going to get a control image. Okay. All right, hard light. All right, good. Now, let's say we wanted to block that light from hitting the background. We could bring in the flag. We bring it right up. Another really useful way to use the flag is if you pay close attention to the shadow on the background. So I know kind of about how close I want to bring it in as soon as this shadow starts to interact with her shadow. So I'm actually looking a little bit at her, but I'm also looking at the shadow on the background. And that's hitting that shoulder. I can see it's hitting the shoulder. If I'm here, it's not. Okay? And how you change the angle is going to change how things look there. All right, so I'm going to do that. Block the background light. Turn a little bit more to me, please. Great. Okay. And here I've blocked the light from the background. Okay, now, you can also use the flag to create shape and shadow from the front. So, if I happen to want to create a little bit of a defined shadow on the side of the face, I bring it in. And again, the closer it is to the light, the softer it's going to be. The closer it is to your subject, the harder it's going to be. So when you want to create these little pocket channels of light, this is how you do it. All right, let's get a little bit of a meter on that face. I might have lost a little bit. There you go.
4.5, yeah.
Okay, woo, lost a lot. Turn it to the light. All right, 4.5. Let's see. Okay, and what we have is this very soft, beautiful cut of light across the face. Now, if you want to make that more defined, all you got to do is bring it closer to your subject, a little bit further away from the light. I'm going to bring it down a little bit. There we go. Can you bring it up a little bit higher, please? Now I'm paying close aware because this is a smaller flag that I want to make sure that shadow is covered pretty consistently across my background. I don't want to see any of the edges of it. Can you lean forward just a little bit for me, please? Perfect. Good, and let's get a test on that.
Go ahead. Nice.
Great. The other thing about this is because we're using a more abrupt edge, it's getting a lot more light on the face, so we want to make sure we're paying close attention to that. Now for me, I'm not going to use this in conjunction, or sorry, I'm not going to use this by itself. I'm going to use this in conjunction with controlling fill and a variety of other instances. But that's how you create that cut of light across the face, and you're going to see me manipulate that similar effect over the course of the shoot production days, but we're going to do it in a few different ways, and we're really going to control the fill and put a lot of the techniques that we learn in terms of lighting and fill and cutting the light all together to create some more beautifully crafted pockets of light.